कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः सुष्ठुवागंसस्तनूभिः यशेम देवहितैयदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तरिक्षो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति 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 गुरु मातृपिता गुरु बंधु सखा तेरे चरणों में स्वामी मेरे कोटि प्रणाम तेरे चरणों में स्वामी मेरा कोटि प्रणाम तुम ही भक्ति हो तुम ही शक्ति हो तुम ही मुक्ति हो मेरे सोमवार शिवा तुम ही करुणा हो तुम ही प्रेम हो तुम ही आराधना मेरे सोमवार शिवा तुम ही पूजा हो तुम ही हो प्रेरणा तुम ही आराधना मेरे सोमवार शिवा गुरु मातृपिता गुरु बंधु सखा तेरे चरणों में स्वामी मेरे कोटि प्रणाम तुम ही भक्ति हो तुम ही शक्ति हो तुम ही मुक्ति हो मेरे सोमवार शिवा तुम ही करुणा हो तुम ही हो प्रेरणा तुम ही आराधना मेरे सोमवार शिवा गुरु मातृपिता गुरु बंधु सखा रखा, तेरे चरणों में स्वामी मेरे कोटि प्रणाम। तेरे चरणों में स्वामी मेरे कोटि प्रणाम। तेरे चरणों में स्वामी मेरे कोटि प्रणाम। कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृतिस्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि। नारायणायेति
Welcome to Satsang. As our hearts are so open from such sacred and beautiful, beautiful chanting, it's the perfect inner environment to dive into truth, to dive into awareness. There's two parts that you need for that type of inner transformation. You need some spark, something from the outside that sparks that inquiry that leads to the awakening, or that sparks the awareness that leads to the awakening. And when I say from outside, I don't mean that it has to fall out of the sky like a meteor. It has to be something that someone says or does. But just from outside of what you normally consider your normal way of being. It may be simply you behold a star a certain way, or you behold the sun a certain way, or the wind blowing off of a flower hits your face and your nose in a certain way. But the other part that you need is you need the inner openness. You need the inner availability. You know, people talk a lot about grace and wanting grace to flow upon them. But grace is there. You know, they speak about the metaphor of a tap of water in a bucket. And the null is on, the tap is on. But if the bucket is upside down, what's going to happen? right? All that water is just going to fall off the top of the bucket onto the ground. In order to benefit from the water coming out of the tap, the bucket has to be the right way. So when we dive into satsang, we need that spark, that stimulus, that something that reminds us. It's not that that thing outside makes us awake. It's that something reminds us of this incredible invitation that we've all been given, and our opportunity to accept it, the opportunity to embrace it, the opportunity to say yes to it. And then you need that inner yes, that inner readiness, that inner availability. So the beautiful and sacred kirtan, the Vedic chanting, all of that we do before going into satsang is that which opens our hearts in such a way it's like preheating an oven before you cook, right? Before you're going to bake something in the oven, if you preheat it, things cook a lot better. Not just faster, but actually better. And in the same way, when we open our hearts through love, through prayer, through chanting, through singing, it makes us more ready for the transformation. Yes.
How is the moment of death decided? My concern is not how I die or when I die, but how to improve karma to get a better spiritually enlightened birth.
To get a more spiritually enlightened?
Birth.
Next time. Okay. So there's a lot of questions in there, actually. The moment of death, the law of karma, spiritually enlightened birth next time. But all of it comes under the umbrella of the karmic package. All of it comes under this law of karma. Now, the time of death, the way of death, all of that is determined by our full karmic package. Now, our full karmic package is both that which I bring into this life with me, as well as all of that I do in this life. So when we think about predetermination, a lot of people say, well, is my moment of death predetermined? Or is my next birth predetermined? Or is my bank account, my career, my marriage, are these things predetermined? And in an interesting way, it feels to me actually like a trick question. Because, yes, of course it's predetermined. And we are the ones determining it. When most people say predetermined, what they mean is that somehow, through something over which they have absolutely no control, through something over which they are just helpless victims, their bank account, their marriage, their entire life has been determined. No. The in predetermined is our own actions. We are the predetermining it. So you will die in the way that you live. A lot of people think, oh, well, just at that moment of death, because of course our culture tells us, our scriptures tell us that the thought that is in our mind at the moment of death, that's what determines our next birth. That's what determines what happens after death. And so you hear people say, oh, well, just right before I die, I'm going to start chanting God's name. But it doesn't work. That which you think about, that which is your nature, is what becomes your destiny. Do not think that you're going to live one way and you're going to die another way. So, how we die, when we die, what thought we are having while we die that then contributes to what happens after we die. All of that is being baked, it's being cooked, it's being figured out. And yeah, some of it comes from past lives. Some of it comes from the astrological sign in which we came in this birth. That, of course, was related to and dependent upon karma from past births. But do not think that the moments of this life are irrelevant. Everything that you do is contributing to making that decision. So if you want to make sure, for example, that your death is very spiritual, if you want to make sure that in your next birth you come in a very spiritual way, what that means is you need to live this life in a spiritual way. That then creates your sanskaras, it creates your mind. Without getting too subtle here, when we die, the physical body we know is over. It gets buried, it gets burned, it's finished. Even if you do nothing to it, eventually it's going to just dissolve. We know that the soul lives on. In the deepest way, the soul never took birth, never died, is indivisible from God. In another way, that's Atma, or Paramatma. Then we have Jivatma, our individual soul, which is that soul that is experiencing a karmic package as it takes physical body after physical body and birth after birth. Along with that Jivatma that goes from body to body, along with the Jivatma, goes what we refer to as the subtle body, which is Man, Buddhi, and Ahankar. Our mind, our intellect, and our ego. That stays with you. Do not think, my friends, that if your ego is killing you in this lifetime, that, well, just wait till you die and then you'll be free of it. It actually stays. The reason that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years our saints and our sages and our gurus and our scriptures have implored us to do sadhana, to meditate, to work with our egos, to be free of them, to purify the mind, to purify the intellect, is not just so that we can have a more pleasurable 80, 90 years on earth. It's not just about comfort along the way that, life is a lot more comfortable without an ego. It's actually because this is what goes with you. The work that you do, the sadhana that you do now, that stays with you. The way that you get trapped by your ego, the impurity of your intellect, stays with you. So if you don't want to purify your intellect in this life, no problem. The universe is very patient. It will wait. You can do it next life. If you don't want to become free of your ego in this life, the universe will wait. No problem. You can do it next life. But this death and birth are dependent upon that karmic package and that karmic journey, and where that karmic journey is, how much has unfolded during this particular physical incarnation. So commit to spirituality, do your meditation, do your japa, do your seva, live according to the tenets, right? It's so easy. We've been given these beautiful yam and niyam. Patanjali gave them to us for yoga. They're the same that we are given in our scriptures, right? It's so easy. How do you live? Non-violence, truthfulness. Don't harm, don't lie, don't steal, don't hoard, be pure, have integrity. This is the way to live. Spirituality doesn't mean how many books have you memorized. It's how you live. So commit yourself to it, knowing that that's the very best thing that you can do to ensure that both your passing in this life and your entering in the next life are as spiritual and as conducive to awakening as they possibly can be. That power is with you. Grab it. Yes.
What is divine light and how can we experience it?
Divine light is in you. Divine light is who we are. It's not that there's the light of me and the light of the divine. When I really see the light of me, it is the divine light I'm experiencing. And when I see the divine light, it's not separate from me. You know, the reason that we put on tilak here is to remind us of the third eye. And then you ask, well, why? Like, why do we need to be reminded of our third eye? Why does it matter? And it matters of such great importance because it is the third eye that, when it opens, allows us to see the truth. But in order to see the truth, you need light. So that divine light is the light whereby we can see the truth. So we put on tilak to remind us, you have not just two eyes that see shape and form and movement and color, but you have a third eye that actually sees divinity. And the divine light is the light whereby, through which we see that truth. This is why when we light a diya, for example, or we chant prayers, Tam Soma Jyotirgamaya, lead us from darkness to light. Or when we pray to the Guru, right? What does Guru mean? The one who removes darkness and brings light. The light that we speak about in all these cases, the light that we talk about when we say Diwali is a festival of light, is that divine light whereby we can see the truth. It's not just the light of a lamp or a flashlight through which I can read my book, or the light of my phone whereby I can make my way through my dark room on the way to the bathroom in the night. But it's the divine light that allows me to see the divine in me and in others. So turn it on. That's what our practice is for, to turn on that light. The meditation we do, the prayers we do, the satsang we do, the seva we do, the lives we live are those that enable us to turn it on. The food we eat, when we emphasize being sattvic over tamasic, right? Light and darkness, even in what we eat. Now, obviously, I wouldn't refer to certain food as divine light, but our ability to see, both with these two eyes as well as with the third eye, is impacted very deeply and very directly by our experience in this physical body, which is why we keep the body pure. It's why we eat sattvic food. It's why we hear sattvic things. It's why we don't eat meat. It's why we don't drink alcohol, take drugs. It's why we don't listen to, music that's full of violence and degradation toward women and all of that. It's why we don't see movies or TV shows or social media posts that are all about violence and exploitation. Because they all leave sanskaras. We are taking things in through all of our senses. And when you take in, whether it's food on a plate or food through your ears or food through your eyes, that's tamasic, that's dark. You can't create light out of darkness. And so this is why we make sure that the food we eat, the things we see, the things we hear, are those that are conducive to creating a physical body that's connected to an emotional body, that's the vehicle for my spiritual body to experience its own awakening, to experience its own truth. So the lighter, literally, that I can keep this physical, emotional, psychological body, the more conducive it's going to be for my spiritual body to see the light and to live in light.
Do you believe in vibrational energy healing like Reiki, Sekhem, and other modalities?
Absolutely, I believe in vibrational healing or energy healing. We're energetic beings. Think for a moment, because as many of you know, I'm a scientist at heart and by history. So for me, I love to weave together the science and the spirituality. And of course, they're not nearly as different as people think. But so let's look at science for a moment. If I blow a whistle at a very, very high frequency, such a high frequency, in fact, that maybe you can't even hear it. Your dog can hear it. Dogs can hear very high frequencies, but you couldn't hear it. I could shatter a glass on the other end of the room. I'm sure there must be a whole bunch of YouTube videos about that. We used to see it when I was young in science class, long before there was YouTube. But I would bet that if you went onto YouTube and you searched for some video of a very, very high frequency sound shattering a glass, that you could easily find them. How does that happen? Well, it happens through one very simple form of energy: sound waves. sound waves come from my whistle and they move through the air. We can't see them. In some cases, they're at a frequency we can't even hear. But when that frequency is at a certain level, it shatters the glass. I don't know the physics of exactly how that happens, but it does. In the same way, people who have very, very loud jobs, so maybe they're rock musicians, or maybe they are the cleaning guy in a concert hall where rock musicians play all the time. Maybe they work in the airport on the runway where the noise from the airplanes. If they're not really careful and wear special ear protection, they'll actually damage their eardrums. You actually can burst an eardrum. How does that happen? Again, energy. Waves of sound of different frequencies that enter into my ear. They go into the ear canal. That's how we hear anyway. Forget bursting eardrums. How do we hear? We hear through energy. Different waves at different frequencies. They tickle little hairs inside the inside of our ear, and those little hairs send little signals to parts of our brain, mostly in the temporal lobes, right? And then we hear things, and then it goes higher up, and then we start to understand, what does that mean? It's all energy. So if one frequency can shatter a glass, if one frequency, if you've ever been to a rock concert, you know you can be sitting 300 meters from the stage or from a speaker. But if they're loud, you feel it in your body. And when you leave that concert, your body is still kind of vibrating like this. Music is over, but your body is still vibrating. How? It's just energy of waves. Sound is an energy. Light is an energy. Heat is an energy. Think about, it's winter time for us now in India. One of the most beautiful things in the world is to go outside in the middle of the day when the sun is at its peak and to just be there in the sun. And it's just lovely. And it changes the whole way that your body feels. It's healing. But not just healing on a physical level, like the whole emotional body just goes, in that sun. Well, what is that? It's just energy. It's light energy and it's heat energy. It's what comes off the sun. But when that hits my skin, not only does it eventually change the color of my skin from, white to brown or red, depending on how long I stand there, but it gives me a very deep inner experience of warmth, of niceness. Similarly, if you go out in the nighttime and you don't have enough clothes on, you feel cold, right? It changes how you feel inside. So these are all really basic, simple examples of how energy impacts the body. So then you take practices like Reiki, like pranic healing, like so many forms of healing that don't actually rely on physical touch. So it's not a massage, but it's just through the energy. Well, if I can emit sound waves from my mouth that could shatter a glass across the room, why couldn't I emit waves from my hands that can change the molecular activity of what's happening in someone else's body? Of course we can. Now again, you have to know what you're doing. I can't just shout and expect the glass to break. It's not about volume, it's actually about frequency. So you have to know a little bit of what you're doing. Or it has to be just so aligned with the divine flow, so aligned with the flow of the universe. So if you don't know Reiki, you don't know pranic healing, you don't know a specific energy healing, don't worry. The power that you have through being aligned with the power of the universe, the healing power of the universe, is very great. And love is the greatest way to catalyze and channel that energy. So absolutely, I believe in it. And I've seen it. I've seen it work with my own eyes. I've seen it work in my own life. And it's something that we all should have faith in, both as recipients of it, but also as the ability to give it, because we all have the ability. Some of us may have refined it better. Like some people can whistle better than others. But we all have it. And even without refining it, if we can just align ourselves with that healing energy of the universe, we can become channels of it. And certainly our world needs as much healing as it can possibly get. So align yourself. Know that you, yes, talking to every one of you, can be that healer. Just tap into it. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening, and we'll see you all on Thursday. Have a beautiful morning, day, wherever you are. So much love from these sacred and holy banks of Mother Ganga.